topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Hello and welcome to It's Your Voice, the show that hosts enriching conversations in diversity. My name is Bahia Yaksan. I'm a core alignment coach and a diversity educator and a host of the show that helps bring representation to organizations, people, information that is marginalized to bring it out and amplify it. Today's show is called Defending Our Communities, Immigration Enforcement and Collective Support. We're very fortunate to have attorney Kamalpreet Chohan today, who is an immigration attorney, as our guest, who will kindly explain legal defense services ranging from immigration enforcement and removal defense work that the California Immigration Project provides. And before I bring Attorney Chohan on, I just want to, out of respect, honor the names of people who have actually been killed directly at the hands of ICE agents. And this show is so timely, and I'm so grateful that we have an attorney who can speak to what community members can do, because I know so many people are concerned about the kind of unbelievable violence on so many streets in America. We know most recently in Minneapolis, just incredibly unruly, unconstitutional behavior by federal agents who have been apparently ordered to do this completely outrageous behavior that it's not American, not constitutional. And I just want to name 4 of the people who've been killed. Luis Gustavo Nunez, and I hope I'm saying his last name right, Caceres, who was killed January 5th. He's from Honduras, 2025. Keith Porter Jr., who was fatally shot at the hands of ICE in December 31st, 2025, who was African American. And a lot of people are more familiar with the most recent killings of who looked like a very kind, good-hearted person who was out protesting, Renee Good, and then Alex Pretty. And I just want to say their names because sometimes I can't. It's so painful. So Kamalpreet Chohan, please join me now. I really look forward to just learning from you, and I appreciate your work. Can you hear me?
Can you hear me? Hello?
Oh, there. Now I hear you.
Okay, perfect. Yes. Yes,
Great.
I'm really excited for this conversation.
So how would you like to start by saying anything about your own interest in choosing this field of law, or any reason you came into this immigration defense services, and then we can just start talking about things that you think the public should know about.
Yeah, of course. I can start with just my background of wanting to do immigrant work and just support the immigrant communities. I'm a daughter of Punjabi immigrants, so I grew up, seeing, just the difficulties of my parents trying to just go through this world.
being an immigrant, not understanding, the language that's forced upon them, that's English, and just having to navigate that as a daughter of an immigrant, and having the privilege to be born here, and be born here when and the privilege of everything they fought for to give me in order for me to to get an education and do this work. And so I grew up also in a small town in the Central Valley, Livingston, and it's really immigrant heavy. It's Mexican and Punjabi populations, and so I grew up just around immigrant community, and I grew up just seeing the fights that they had to do, that I wanted to work and support in. And so I went into law school wanting to do social justice work, and specifically immigration work. And so, I'm really excited today that I can join as advocate, as someone who is, empowering the immigrant community, but also just someone who can provide know your rights trainings and support others in order to get involved in this fight and to get involved in this cause and just support our community and just promote care within ourselves, but also within our communities, that we always see people who are humans, people who deserve respect, and people who deserve to live where they want to.
Thank you for the background. Really appreciate that. So do you yourself do know your rights workshops?
Yeah, so I can talk about California Immigration Project in general. I mean, we're housed here in
Okay.
Sacramento, as well as we have a location in Fresno, but our organization, we do a lot of know your rights workshops in different locations, and school districts and other organizations, and we also promote it within um, other networks in order to make sure that folks understand their rights. We also do other legal services, and we do a lot of direct legal services for folks who are actually in immigration court. And we would call that removal defense work. And so myself, I coordinate the Attorney of the Day program here in Sacramento. And if folks don't know, Sacramento Immigration Court was created in 2019. So it's recently new. And so it's a program where we have attorneys go and support people who are unrepresented, immigrants who are unrepresented in the removal proceedings in front of the judge for just that day. So that's a big way that we help folks understand their rights, especially when they're in immigration proceedings. And I'm not sure if everyone's aware, but with immigration, with the immigration court, it's not like criminal court where you get assigned a public defender. You have the right to an attorney. You have the right to obtain an attorney, but the government's not going to give you money or not going to support you in getting that attorney. Right? They'll give you referrals to organizations, but you have yourself would have to seek that out as someone who's in immigration court. And so the Attorney of the Day program is trying to bridge that gap, right, and have attorneys actually present in court to represent these folks for that day only in their hearings.
I was so happy to learn about that. I had no idea that it existed until I talked to your executive director last week.
Yeah, it's an amazing program, and I wanna highlight that it's not only in Sacramento. I mean, there's a Concord Immigration Court, and there's also the San Francisco Immigration Court, and they both also have their versions of the Attorney of the Day program. And the Sacramento one, we modeled ours against the San Francisco one, since San Francisco Immigration Court has been there for decades.
So does it work that you have attorneys just there to see who might be brought in, or do they meet the people they're going to defend? Are they notified some other way, or are they like stationed there, so to speak, at the court?
So we do communication with the immigration court in Sacramento, where they give us like the docket information. So basically, when are the hearings happening, what day, what judge. And so we get that information, and then we send that out to our volunteers, our attorney volunteers, as well as our non-attorney volunteers, to see if folks can support and volunteer their time to go to one of those hearings, those dockets. And so then those individuals, or me myself, I usually try to go once or twice a week, go to the courts, and you're seeing how many people are going to be in a hearing, and you're seeing what the folks that you are going to plan to support during that hearing or represent during the hearing. And So then you would do intakes with those individuals. Usually happens before, or sometimes usually happens before or after the hearing, but you will do like an actual intake with the individual and give them resources and help them understand their rights in those proceedings.
Wow. Okay, so you see the docket ahead of time, but of course there's no way to meet the people until you're actually there.
Yes. So we see the number that are yeah, we see the number of people on the docket, but we don't know who the people are going to be until we're actually there.
That makes sense. And sometimes they don't get a chance for the intake until after their hearing.
Yeah. The judges here in Sacramento, they do prefer sometimes that we meet with the folks after their hearing. But if we do that, a lot of times, for example, I have gone to the judge after to clarify something or to let the judge know about something that maybe the individual wasn't able to speak about because, as we all know, folks are really scared right now. We've been seeing a huge decrease in attendance at the court. And so it's really important that there's someone there that can advocate for them, especially during this time of just fear.
Mm. And you said there are also non-attorneys who volunteer, or people who go like just as support, like lay advocates?
And I think that's just to uplift the fact that, folks are wanting to get involved and wanting to empower their communities. We have non-attorneys who you can support the attorney by supporting with getting demographic information of the individual, supporting with translation with Spanish or Russian. We see those as the main languages, Dari and Pashto as well, but just supporting with interpretation is also just like with giving out resources. And we do trainings. Actually, I have a training tomorrow. And so if folks are interested, they can, of course, email our car organization, but we have a training tomorrow at 12 for non-attorneys.
Are they online or in person or?
So the training is online, but the
Okay.
individuals, of course, will go in person to support at the court.
Okay, yeah, the trainings are online. Okay, and for people who are listening who can't see, we have the information on the screen for people who can see, obviously, but should they email at the info at CALIM, like CALIMM.org? Like,
Yes. They can also call 916-241-3355.
okay, let's get to 916-241-3355. And so you have interpretation services.
Yes. So on our staff, we have a diversity of advocates. And so we have advocates who speak Dari and Pashto. I myself speak Punjabi. We have advocates who speak Spanish as well. So a lot of times we're able to support in that interpretation. However, our non-attorney volunteers, we really rely on them for interpretation needs when needed. And we do have a vast network. And so we're always trying to grow that network.
That's wonderful. People can use the same contact information to volunteer, right?
Yeah, and there's so many ways to volunteer. I want to say not only with just our organization, but there's also an organization called NorCal Resist that's here based in Sacramento as well. And they do Migra Watch trainings. They do accompaniment trainings where they accompany folks, immigrants who are scared to attend their hearings. They accompany them to their hearings to make sure that they're safe, and they give this sense of like safety and support to that individuals or that family. So there's a lot of ways folks can get involved.
Is that what Migra Watch is?
So Migra Watch is basically community members that are out in the community on the streets, just seeing what's happening to see if there's ICE presence. So that's what Migra Watch is. It's people just out in the community watching to see if there's any ICE presence, if they see any vans, if there's anything that they can report out. And then they report that to the Rapid Response Network. So that the Rapid Response Network in NorCal Resist can report out that there's ICE presence in the communities.
Okay, that's why it's called the watch.
Mm-hmm.
I just saw the beginning of a training, just like a clip. I have not gone through a training, but I thought, okay, well, that's also interesting. The more we know, the better. Just like can you give some examples of like what would be appropriate and useful if the ICE agents are listening and not pushing you to the ground? what would be the few things to say if you're watching and they're threatening you just by being there?
Yeah, I mean, I will say that everyone, what people are doing is always appropriate, but the violence that we are seeing, the brutality that we are seeing is just devastating. And so, of course, we would say that please do not put your body in the way, and put your body in the way, but you are allowed to record, right? And we have been seeing how important it is to record, how important it is to observe and to bear witness to these events that are happening. And so I want to emphasize that. I mean, do never put yourself in harm's way. And of course, if you are afraid and observing is not something that you feel like you have the capacity for, or you're just not able to, there are other ways that you can become involved. But if you are planning to observe, right, I think the Migra Watch training goes into a lot more depth, that folks should watch that and should attend that training. But in terms of recording, of course, you have the right to record in public spaces.
It's good. It's good to have the information, clearly stated. Appreciate that. So another service, can you explain what, am I using the term affirmative correctly? Like affirmative defense, like that you also walk people through who are in the legal process of becoming naturalized or getting legal papers to work or different situations. Can you just educate us about that part of the defense work if they're not stopped from? So many people are trying to just follow the rules, but then are not listened to, and they're kind of pulled out of the process by the current malpractices of ICE. But if people are able to go to court and able to continue with the legal way of becoming a legal citizen, can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so immigration law in general and the immigration field is it's complex, and so I'll try to make it a little bit more like easier to understand. So there is affirmative aspect, which basically is that you're applying with USCIS, and then there's the immigration court, where you have immigration court, right? With EOIR, with the Executive Office of Immigration Review, so, right? So there's two separate entities, USCIS, and then immigration court. With USCIS, that's when you do affirmative applications. And so that's when a lot of folks, when they talk about family petitions, or they talk about adjustment of status, or they talk about naturalization. So that is where you're applying for applications with USCIS. And our organization does have, we do affirmative consultations. And of course, our organization we offer free services for those who qualify. So of course, we would ask that you call in and ask for a consultation if you are thinking about doing maybe a family petition or adjustment of status or naturalizing or DACA renewals and things like that. That would be affirmative process when you're going with USCIS. Then the defensive process, which means you're more defending yourself against deportation proceedings, that's when you get placed in immigration court.
Okay. And can you remind us what CIS stands for?
Yes, I can. Let me. I feel like every time I know, and then I'm like, it's the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services.
Okay, citizenship and citizenship. Okay, and immigration services. Thanks. And would that include like the need to plead for amnesty to get out of dangerous situations? Would that be under CIS,
Mm.
USCIS?
So I think are you talking maybe about asylum? Because there
Yes,
is
that's the right word. Sorry.
yes, no, of course it is. It's so complicated, so I understand. So with asylum, you can a lot of folks when they enter, let's say the border, southern border, they're seeking asylum, right? Because they're fearful of going back to their home country. Obviously there's so many reasons, but they may have, but they're fearful going back to their home country. A lot of some folks do seek asylum with USCIS, and then a lot of folks sometimes, if you're in court, they seek asylum through the immigration court process. And the application for asylum is the I-589. And so you would fill out the application, And of course, you want to make sure you complete every single question. And I do want to emphasize the AOD program. We have pro se clinics where we support people in filling out their asylum application. And NorCal Resist also has pro se clinics where they assist folks in filling out their asylum application for free, of course.
Okay, and pro se means free.
Pro se just means without an attorney. Like you're representing yourself.
That's right. That's right. What else should we know about? Like if we're concerned about our neighbors, for instance, or concerned for their safety?
Yeah, I think right now, we're at a place where we're all concerned for our neighbors and for our community, for their safety, and we're seeing more racial profiling than anything else. And so even with folks who are naturalized, folks who are citizens, folks who are legal permanent residents, folks who have, these documentations, they themselves are fearful of doing anything and going outside because a lot of it is, we're seeing ICE target folks without even asking, just with racial profiling. Mm-hmm. And so I do want to emphasize, of folks just knowing their rights. And there are red cards that folks can, have with them that basically have all your rights on them. And if you go on Google and you just search like a red card, it will be there, and they're in different languages. And I want to emphasize that because a lot of times we mainly see things in English, but they're in a lot of different languages, which are really useful for a lot of individuals. And it's really important to have them with you, just so you know what you can and cannot do. And I can emphasize, one would be do not open your door if an immigration attorney is knocking. If you're inside your house, right, you don't need to open a door without a warrant. And that warrant has to be signed by a judge. And there's a lot of people who get confused about administrative warrants and actual warrants that are signed by judges. And I think it's really important to know that ICE cannot enter your house without a warrant signed by a judge. And another one would be just do not answer any questions from an immigration agent if they try to talk to you, right? You have the right to remain silent, right? And do not sign anything without first speaking to a lawyer, right? You have the right to speak with a lawyer. And I want to emphasize that in terms of rapid response, if there is an ICE arrest, or, if your community member has been arrested, in California, there are rapid response numbers for where you are in your region. And Sacramento has a rapid response number as well that I can share.
Yeah, can you go ahead and say that out loud a couple times right now so anybody listening could write it down?
Yeah, so the Sacramento Rapid Response Network number, which you can call or text, is 916-382-0256. Again, that's 916-382-0256.
That's a great resource. So that's so interesting because I'm all of this is really just important to hear, the whole idea of even that you have the right to not open your door. And it seems like, it's just flashing to my mind is that wasn't there a journalist who was trying to not open her door? Like right now, it just seems like some of the agencies, and I know there's good people in every organization, but some of the super aggressive, violent agencies just seems like they'll just break down your door. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and
So
we are seeing that.
I mean, that is a reality. It's not like I'm not imagining that is happening. And so that's so interesting also, like if this is help clarifying what is like misconceptions and what's still legal and still true, that they do need a warrant and it does need to be signed by a judge. So I'm like, okay, what if I'm just putting myself in the shoes of someone. What if I don't open my door, but I look through the little, if your door has, what do you call those little eye holes, and they hold up a warrant, will I be able to tell if it was signed by a judge? Like, does it say judge? You know what I mean? How can we even tell if it's legitimate?
Yeah, it should say judge on there. And I will say there are a lot of samples of what a real warrant looks like. And I encourage folks to make sure that they are aware of how a warrant looks so that when you are in this situation, you know what to look out for. And there are so many resources out there of folks showing the differences between an administrative warrant and a real warrant signed by a judge.
Oh, that's good to know. Okay, and of course the Fifth Amendment, right? The right to remain silent.
Mhm. And I give these rights knowing that a lot of times they're not, I mean, folks are seeing that they're being abused. And we can also talk about just like due process. We're seeing that
Please,
happening in the courts. And so
yes,
I,
please. Sorry, please do talk about due process and take
yeah,
your time. We got plenty of time. Every step that we hear is helpful.
yeah. And so I do want to emphasize that even with me as an advocate saying, practice your rights, know your rights, we are seeing these rights are not being actually like upholding. We're seeing that, folks
Mhm.
that just the brutality that we're seeing is devastating. And so I don't want to underscore that, folks, it is important to know your rights, but also advocates ourselves, like we feel helpless too when we see these rights not being upheld. Even with due process. And I will say, I was at the courts when, at the Sacramento Immigration Court, when a lot of folks were being arrested right after their hearing, even after judges weren't dismissing their cases. And, this is showing that, due process doesn't even exist now. We're seeing a lot of, detentions, and we're seeing a lot of folks not being able to have that right to represent, to actually speak their case and follow through with the case that they have and the right to a court hearing. Folks are not even giving court hearings anymore, right? That's taken away from them.
Mm-hmm.
And so I do want to emphasize that now. And there's so many strategies that immigration enforcement, ICE, and that's going the administration is doing in order to make sure that these due process rights are not upheld and that folks are not given the right to a hearing. Especially that we're seeing with asylum cooperative agreements where folks are told like, oh, we have these agreements with other countries like Honduras and Ecuador and Guatemala and Uganda, and we're not going to allow you to even fight for your case for asylum. We're just going to end it and say that if you can't show that you're scared to go to Honduras, then we're just going to remove you there.
So outrageous.
Yeah, so it's also it's very devastating because a lot of times individuals are just trying to fight for their families or trying to fight for themselves in order to actually have their case heard from a judge, which they should have, right? That's what we always seen. And so for that to be taken away is so devastating. And to see that at court almost every day, for me, I myself feel helpless of what I can do to help these individuals when I know, they're up against so much, especially given the fact that they are really just trying to have their hearing in front of the judge.
Mm. Yeah, I imagine it's wearing and tearing on anyone trying to advocate or defend, even just to witness it, much less be a target.
Yeah, and a lot of times, our immigrant communities don't even understand what these, asylum cooperative agreements are. They don't understand what's being said in their immigration court hearings because it's when they're there, they're so anxious, there's so much fear, and it's really, it's hard for them to advocate for themselves. And that's why I want to emphasize, the Attorney of the Day program and the way folks can get involved. They can accompany these individuals, our community members, to their court hearings. They can go to a dockets with the Attorney of the Day program and support families and immigrant communities there. There's also a court watch system that NorCal Resist has where folks are at court, all day until the end from 9 to 4 in order to witness what's happening at the immigration court in Sacramento. So there's so many ways folks can be involved in order to bear witness to this. and support, their immigrant neighbors and communities.
That's important too. Well, can you explain what asylum cooperative agreements are?
Yeah, I can. And I think I want to preface, let me make sure I want to preface just by saying that this is new for like we recently have been seeing these in December. And so there's a lot of like new changes happening at the immigration court. And so before I talk about asylum cooperative agreements, I also want to talk about the fact that we only have 2 judges left at the Sacramento Immigration Court that do non-detained work, which means they do work with folks who are not in detention. And so that just makes it hard in itself for folks to have their cases heard.
Gosh, and why is it that we have only 2 left?
Because the administration is firing judges all over the world, and we see this in San Francisco, we've seen this in Concord, and we see this in here in Sacramento, but also in New York, and it's all over the world. So many judges are being fired. I don't know why. I mean, I will say we're seeing it as a way to make the immigration system dysfunctional, so folks can't have their due process rights. It's a way to make it harder for individuals, to get asylum. It's a way to make it hard for individuals to want to fight for their cases.
Wow. More bad news, but good to know about it.
Yeah, and then
Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, and then with asylum cooperative agreements, there are agreements that the U.S. government has with other countries to say that we will accept this many people into our country. This amount of people from our country. And so the agreements that they have is like, for example, with Honduras, they have agreement with Guatemala, they have agreement with Ecuador, and they have agreement with Uganda. And they have agreements with other countries as well. But these are the countries that we're seeing in Sacramento Immigration Court. And so basically when an individual is given a asylum cooperative agreement, it's like a pre-termission. And so they're saying we're going to terminate your asylum application, your asylum claim that to the country that you have of your country of origin, and instead of having you fight for your case for your country of origin, we're now going to tell you that we can deport you to another country, unless you show that you have a fear to go to this another country. So another third country, which you maybe never went to, where you don't even know anything, and also another country that has this violence, which is not another safe, it's not a safe third country. And so the government is saying, well, we're not going to hear you on your asylum claim. We're just going to terminate that asylum claim and instead send you to this third country.
That is so unbelievably outrageous. That was just, it's just hard to digest. It's just unbelievable, kind of the fire hose of completely unconstitutional, like you said, brutal, cruel practices. You have to be evil to invent these ideas, to send people to a country they've never been to, in which they will not be safe, have no connections, separated from the families. And I have not seen it's hard to find exact statistics, but a very low number of people who've been taken do not have criminal background records. That is not what the people who did vote for the current administration voted for. I mean, so many Republicans and other people, who voted for Trump regret it now and are saying that is not what we meant.
Yeah, I mean, right now we see so many people in detention. And we see, so the government trying to open up so many more detention centers that are for profit, right? They're for profit, or they have contracts. And so I want to emphasize that there are so many people in detention, and even in Sacramento Immigration Court, the judges are focusing on detained cases because there's just so many. And so that in itself is just like, I don't know, there's like so many folks who are detained right now, and that is so terrifying, especially families. And we see like 5-year-olds in the news, and there's so many families, so many kids who are detained, that we're not seeing because of course they're hidden in these detention centers. in order to, and they're suffering so much in these, we see so many instances of food not being provided, adequate care, adequate medicine. Um, we see so many in, like, I don't know, so much brutality in the detention centers itself. And so we're not able to record those or see those injustices in the detention centers. And so I think I do want to emphasize that is also something that we're seeing. But to go back to can you repeat your question again? I'm so sorry. I just like ran on tangent.
No, it's all relevant. And honestly, I probably have a new question, which is, again, it's just helpful, and it's just true. Like, I'm just right now I'm thinking about what your detention centers and how, again, outrageous and unconstitutional is that our elected representatives who have it's part of their job to go and check on conditions are being kept out systematically from detention centers. I think I was asking about the very low percentage of people who actually have
Criminal.
criminal background, including the people who were killed,
Yeah. I mean,
shot.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, they don't. A lot. And I will say, in Sacramento Immigration Court, more than half, I will say, that I see at the immigration court do not have criminal records. These are just families who have entered, or individuals who have entered, who are just seeking asylum, or are seeking a safe place to build a home, a safe place to transform their lives and their families' lives, from the torture, or from the violence that they have suffered from in their home countries. And so I think the fact that, that's even being used to say, oh, we should detain folks because they have criminal records. That in itself is just horrible, I will say, because half of these people do not. I mean, we see kids, we see families, and they do not have criminal records. And I know it's more than half, and I know there's a real statistic out there. I don't know that on top of my head, but it is, there's more than half people who do not have criminal records who are in detention.
Ah, that's what I thought. That just confirms the other statistics. It's definitely more than half that do not have criminal
Yeah, and
records.
I know there's a real statistic out there, which I don't know on top of my head, but I'm pretty
Mhm.
sure folks look into it.
And how long can not that that agency or people in charge of it are following rules or laws, um, unless it benefits the small percentage of people who are getting rich off of this crazy authoritarian approach. Um, how long are people stuck in detention centers?
Yeah, and what I will say, detentions, forcing people into detention and forcing people to isolate is another tactic, right? To make sure folks don't have due process rights.
Yeah.
Because folks they're in, we've seen folks there for years.
Mhm.
They'll have, and I always say, like, I have clients where they'll have a master set in detention, and then that judge has been fired. So now that master has got reset, and then another judge is fired. Now that master got reset again. So they've been there for a year without a hearing. Um,
For
so
lack
folks,
of judges.
yeah, like, so judges, and also just, so many folks are being detained right now. And it's a way to deter people for fighting for their rights, because who wants to be isolated from their families in a detention center where and I will state, a lot of people don't understand how bad it is in detention centers. It's horrible, right? You're not getting medical needs. You're not getting, like, access to families. A lot of times it's hard to even reach out to your families to speak to them. A lot of times, the access to food is an issue that we've been seeing too. And there's also, when COVID was happening, right? A lot of individuals were getting right, like COVID, and there was no, like, safety. Um, so no one wants to be in detention, isolated. Of course, folks, want to leave after a year, or even after a couple of months. I mean, your mental health in itself will deteriorate along with your physical health. And so we've been seeing folks wanting to leave and saying, I'll go back. Like, I just don't want to be in detention.
Mm, just breaking people down, and incredible suffering. And yeah, no wonder people are dying in detention centers.
Yeah.
It's so horrific. So what do you do to keep yourself and like other attorneys who do this work day in and day out to sort of keep hope, regain hope, renew, and when you do trainings and stuff, what do you do to inspire others to like how important it is to keep a collective spirit of not stopping, not stopping fighting for justice?
Yeah, and I think so. For me personally, in our organization, I think we have such a great community of advocates in our organization that we rely on each other, and I think that always helps to have your own community where you're able to your vent to able to vent, but also able to do things outside, and it's sustainable, right? In terms of you, it's I think in our organization we it's really noted that we want to make sure that we're sustaining ourselves, but also we have that community to speak to each other about it. But I also will say that with seeing all this like devastation and seeing all this brutality, there is also the aspect that more folks are getting outraged and more folks
Hmm.
want to go out and more folks want to support the community and more folks are want to be involved. And so when we do these trainings or when we have accompaniment training like North Carolina's accompaniment trainings and AOD program does AOD trainings to see that more people are wanting to get involved and more people are wanting to support, that in itself is uplifting, because you're seeing that folks do care about their communities, and community care is there, right? And we are all human, and we all deserve respect. We all deserve dignity, to give to each other. And so to see that is just that is in itself is uplifting. But I also think like just to be around your family, I think for me that's been really helpful. Being around your family, being around supportive, just supportive people and supportive friends and the community that you've created, that has helped me as well, to do things outside, and to give yourself faith that that you're also want to continue this work. But there we also have cases where we're winning. We have cases where folks are getting out, um, of detention. Why you want to focus on those as well, those wins that we see, whether they're little or big. And that is really helpful to see that folks are seeing so many individuals getting released. And we've even seen with habeas support, right? So many folks have been released, on habeas from detention. And so there's so many unique ways and strategies that now advocates and communities are thinking about in order to
Mm.
see how we can support each other and get folks out of detention, but also, in our cases. And I think just seeing that community, that in itself is really powerful. And to know that we are fighting back, that is also powerful as well. And I think when we have these trainings and you see the more people getting involved, it keeps you going, because relationships and meaningful relationships, I feel like are really important in this work.
Mm. So true. That is, I want to underscore what you said about it's just what gives me inspiration and hope is that, as you said, as more awareness grows, the outreach grows because we're overall Americans really do believe in freedom across the spectrum and do not like what we're witnessing and people are more and more and more people are getting more and more active and channeling the outrage in really constructive and impressively nonviolent ways. I know we see some people, cussing in people's faces, but um, really kind of maintaining, I know that's part of the training is to keep it, peaceful. And that the community care is there. And one other example of that that I was really so happy to hear because there is so much corporate greed, but I heard Uh, you know, if I didn't have 3 jobs, I would take time to, like, look up statistics and names, but I do remember general, principles, which is that a number of cities where, uh, um, there have been I guess, ICE agencies, um, have been looking for land and buildings to build more detention
Mhm.
centers in America are refusing. Mayors are refusing, governors are refusing, people are refusing, business owners are refusing, saying, "No, not here, not here." we don't want a detention center because we know what you're going to do. You're going to cage human beings, and they're going to be deprived of their basic rights and needs. And that is super powerful and really encouraging.
I honestly, I have not heard of that. And a lot of times it's because I try not to watch the news. I feel like to
Good
sometimes
idea.
there's a lot,
Good idea.
but no, that's so powerful to fight back, and to understand more about what I don't know, also just the aspect of land and how it's being used. And, we, no one, we don't have a claim to land that wasn't ours in the first place, right?
Right.
But I think it's just so powerful to see folks out there and wanting to protect their neighbors, and also making sure that they're protecting their friends and their families, and putting their voices out there and protesting. And there's so many ways to get active. And I want to emphasize that, right? If you would, whatever you are able to do, there's so many other ways that you can become active and support this fight.
That is really true. And I know Indivisible is a very incredibly organized network
Mhm.
across the country, and who knows, maybe in other countries. But I know they inspire other countries also to give people like concrete things they can do and actions they can take. And it really, really doesn't hurt. I know that I say this a lot, but letting our representatives and our elected officials from our region know what you think, what you don't like, what you do like, even if they're doing what you know is right, thanking them is very helpful to keep them going and doing the right thing, because we want the number of elected officials who are standing up for what is right to increase. Um,
Mhm.
but individuals one option, and let's give the email and phone number of the California Immigration Project again.
Yeah, I
The
can go.
office. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Yeah, so our office, our main line is 916-241-3355. Again, that's 916-241-3355. And then our main email is info@calmimm.org. And that's info@calmimm.org.
Thank you. What a great resource based in Sacramento. And gosh, I also want to reiterate what you said about how helpful it is to focus on the wins. Just even like where you work, find out what your employer has planned if and when, no matter where you are, no matter what state or
Mhm.
city, to do if ICE is ordered to come and be violently aggressive at your workplace. And I think just keeping the topic alive, and just validating people's feelings, this is really what human beings need. We're interdependent species, right? We need to
Yeah.
keep encouraging each other to not give up. And again, I love what you said. Focus on the wins, little ones and big ones, and because we can forget, we can just get negative and and depressed and spiral downward. And action is a good antidote to getting depressed or discouraged. Any other words? We just have a couple minutes. I will let you have um, just any closing thoughts you have right now that to keep us going. And
Yeah, I think for me, it would be just to know that we also have each other,
mm,
in these times, and that the way we show up for each other really does matter. And if you want to show up for your community, there's ways you can go to protests. There's a Make It a Watch. There's accompaniment programs. There's Attorney of the Day program here in Sacramento. You can also reach out to our organization, to start showing up for your community and for yourself.
Attorney Kamo Preet Chohan, thank you so much for your time and educating us, and thank the California Immigration Project for asking you to do this to educate me and the public. And I also want to thank our engineer Rebel and our producer Dean K. Piper, and all the listeners and viewers who are paying attention and care. Please share this show and tell everybody about it. The more information we have, the safer we all are. And maybe all tune in next Wednesday at 8 p.m. on Talk4 TV or w4cy.com to listen to It's Your Voice at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And may we all continue to have enriching conversations in diversity. Thanks again.